Because there is a dual, both the laws have been passed under a different statute, and both the legislatures are competent to legislate. But in the application of those laws, the duality is there, and then in that case, the federal law shall prevail. Now, in case of Japanese employment case, there is a federal law which says all the all the Japanese have the right of equal employment as that of Canadian citizens in the employment. Whereas one of the provinces has passed a law that the Japanese are not eligible to be employed in mines. So there are two things. The federal law says all the Japanese are eligible as having the right of equality in employment. Whereas the provincial law says that the Japanese are not eligible to be employed in mines. There is a conflict. Federal law says like a generality of provision. Provincial law creates an exception to it. But both the laws have been passed within their own competence. Both the legislatures are competent. Valid law is there, but inconsistency is there. The matter went to the court, and the court finally held there is an inconsistency, and the federal law shall prevail. Is it a right interpretation? This is for us to understand. Right? Up to this extent, we can say this was the case law, this was the issue, this was the reasoning given by the court, and this was the conclusion drawn by the court. And the court held that there is an inconsistency, and leading to the federal law shall prevail in these circumstances. Is it a right interpretation? Peter Hogg, who is the author and whose book has been recommended by the NCA on constitutional law, and my personal view is also that this is not a right interpretation. Why? So if you are writing an answer on this, you can take a contrary view. You can say these are the reasoning given by the court and declare this law as inconsistent. Perfectly right. But you may express your opinion with the authority of Peter Hogg. You can't claim that I am giving this reasoning because Peter Hogg has already given as a jurist. So give the proper credit to that jurist in your answer and give the reasoning for that. Now, except mines, both the laws have any inconsistency? The answer is no. So the court may interpret harmonious construction of the statutes and may say that this part of the inconsistency may have invalid or inconsistent and unconstitutional, but otherwise both the laws can harmoniously move ahead. So you can give this reasoning also. Right? Now the third example is, in case of a spouse, there is a dispute regarding the custody of a child. The federal law is also there for the custody of the child. Provincial law is also there regarding the grant of custody of the child. Now, both the laws are valid. Both the legislatures are competent to legislate this law. There is no dispute regarding that. The question is only regarding the applicability. Now the court, while interpreting the federal law, has given the custody of the child to the husband. The court under the provincial law, while interpreting the provincial law, has given the custody to the wife. There is a contradiction in the application of law. Inconsistency is there. Then again the court finally held that there is an inconsistency and the federal law shall prevail. Right? Now, there is another very interesting case, Bank of Montreal v. Hall, 1990. The foreclosure proceedings were initiated by the bank. The brief facts are like this. Bank has the mortgage of some property and extended the loan. Then the party was defaulted and a foreclosure procedure was adopted by the bank. Under the federal law, the bank is operating, but under the provincial law, they say there is an act, the Limitation Act by the provincial legislature, which says that if it is a last resort to sell the property for the foreclosure of the mortgage, then you have to give the last notice to the party concerned. If they fail to obey that, fail to discharge their liability, only then you can go ahead with the foreclosure. So two laws are there. Federal law says you can go ahead with foreclosure, no notice is required once the conditions are fulfilled. Provincial law says no, last notice has to be given. Bank proceeded with the foreclosure without giving any notice under the federal law. Then this issue rake up before the court. The court finally held there is an inconsistency. And once the federal law has laid down a certain procedure, no inconsistent, no contrary law can be provided by the province. And resultantly, the action of the bank was upheld regarding the foreclosure without notice. Again, Peter Hope says this is not a right decision. There is in fact no inconsistency. Again, same way you can again further explain it. Why? Because the bank, before proceeding with the foreclosure of the foreclosure action, if gives the notice to the party under the provincial law, whether any detriment or whether it is a detriment to the interest of the bank, the answer is no. If they have followed the procedure under the federal law, or it give a requisite notice under the provincial law also, that will not debar you from foreclosing. So your action may be contemplated that you want to foreclose it, but your intent is to get the discharge of recover the amount. So if you are proceeding with the foreclosure procedure and give the notice under the provincial law, if the party repay the loan, repay or discharge the liability, this is what the interest of the bank is. So why to proceed with the foreclosure if the bank's interest is protected? So both the laws can move ahead in harmonious way. Those are not in conflict with each other. And the jurist says yes, this is not the inconsistency, but both the laws are consistent and can be applied jointly. So this is the view of the jurist. The court has taken the other way around. But if you face with the problem like this, you can give the answer in this way, that the courts have held like this, the jurist has given a point like this, and in my opinion, because of ABC reasons, I am supporting the juristic view or the judicial view. That you can also give. That will give you the authentication that this person knows what is the law, what is the interpretation of law, and what are the actual reasons in support of your answer. Now the next is secondary rule. Now we are discussing about primary rules. Primary rules creates the rights and duties, whereas the primary rules are facilitative, permissive in character. Now the question is whether in case of secondary rules there is a conflict, there is an inconsistency, how to resolve it. It says federal law, the Supreme Court Act says any judgment, any final judgment is appealable before the Supreme Court. Any final judgment passed by any of the courts within the Dominion of Canada, that judgment is appealable before the Supreme Court. This is what the Supreme Court Act says. Whereas one of the province says, no, the issues regarding mechanical lien cases no appeal shall lie to the Supreme Court of Canada. So meaning thereby, either we treat it as an exception or there is an inconsistency. The general provision passed by the federal parliament is that an appeal shall lie from all the judgments passed within the jurisdiction of the competent courts. So any court which passed a final judgment below the hierarchy of Supreme Court, the appeal shall lie under the central law, federal law. Whereas this provincial law says in mechanico-lien cases, no appeal shall lie to the Supreme Court of Canada. There is a consistency or inconsistency. The answer is, court says there is inconsistency. And such a law passed by the provincial legislature is not intra-vires but ultra-vires. Again, some jurists have given the opinion that this is again not inconsistency, but in fact, except the mechanico-lien cases, in all other cases, the appeal lies. And if a party has not chosen to file an appeal, then the answer is that there is no inconsistency. The inconsistency arose only when a party is aggrieved by the mechanico-lien case final judgment and want to challenge before the Supreme Court of Canada. So they may say that it may be treated as an exception, but in my view, this is not a correct interpretation by the jurist. Yes, there is an inconsistency and a right of appeal has been taken away. Once a right of appeal has been taken away, it is a substantial right, not a secondary right only. So one substantial right of appeal, a statutory appeal has been taken away, then we can say there is an inconsistency between the federal law and the provincial law, and the federal law has to be upheld. Now the next part is, this is again a very interesting case, Scashone breathalyzer case. Here the federal law says you can refuse to give your sample of breath while driving as a proof that you are intoxicated. Federal law says you are not compelled to give the sample, whereas the provincial law says that if you refuse the request of the police officer for giving the sample, then your license shall be suspended. So, a federal law giving the liberty to a person that you cannot be compelled to give the sample of your breath while driving as a sample for intoxication. Whereas the provincial law says that in case you refuse the request of the police officer for giving sample of breath, then your driving license shall be suspended. This matter went to the court, and finally the court held that these are the inconsistent laws, and there was a minority view, majority view. But how can you understand this? Whether you can interpret and give the answer in a different way, as per our discussion regarding the previous two cases. I will look forward and find the answer from you tomorrow on this issue, right? So this is all about the first part of distribution of power, the doctrine of paramountcy. Then there is another part that is called overlapping. Negative implication is also there, but overlapping. Suppose a provincial law is there, first in case of say criminal law, an offense has been declared by the federal law and punishment has also been provided. Same act has also been declared as an offense under the provincial law and different punishment has been provided. A person, there is no territory of dominion, there is no territory of federal parliament, there is a territory which belongs to the provinces. So a federal law is applicable in the province. Suppose Nova Scotia I'm just giving you an example. A particular act has been committed by a person and declared to be an offense under the federal law. A similar act or same act has been declared as an offense under the provincial law of Nova Scotia also. Now a person, I think you must be aware how the criminal law proceeds in Canada. In India, I'll just give you the example. The criminal law is passed by the Parliament, but the states have been given the power to make the amendment under the law, criminal law. But the investigating agency is belonging to the state. The process of trial belongs to the state. The prosecution is held by the state. In most of the exceptions are CBI, forget about. Even the judges are the judiciaries of the state. What is the process in Canada? So if you want to read and understand and ultimately appear in the exam of criminal law, you must be aware about it. Find out the answer to that effect also. I'm leaving it to you. Now there is a conflict between the federal criminal law and provincial criminal law. Under which law a person who has committed the act is an offense under the federal law as well as the provincial law be prosecuted? Can he be prosecuted under both the laws? Can he be prosecuted under the provincial law? Can he be prosecuted under the federal law? It says, this is, I think you must have read about double jeopardy. A person cannot be prosecuted.
Res judicata.
No, it is not res judicata. Res judicata is a civil law principle. It is a domain of the civil jurisprudence. In criminal law, it is a double jeopardy.
Double jeopardy.
Yes. Now a person, please mute yourself. A person cannot be prosecuted for the same act twice. We have the protection under the Constitution. Similarly, in the judicial development, it has also been given the protection in Canada. So, he may be prosecuted either under the provincial law or under the federal law, but he can be prosecuted under only one law. Right? So, when there is a overlapping, so this has to be resolved like this. Similarly, in case of civil liability, if the laws are overlapping, suppose there is a law that a house has been burnt by the act of the state. Say there was, or act of the God. Forget about act of the God. Then the federal law says you can claim the compensation from the central body. Similarly, the provincial law says because of this act of God, you can claim the compensation also. Take an example of this recent pandemic. If you have suffered corona, someone has unfortunately died or has suffered some major illness, federal law says you are entitled for $20,000. In case of death, $10,000 in case of major illness. Provincial law also says that yes, you are entitled for $15,000 in case of death and $5,000 in case of major illness. So both the laws are there, both the laws are competent, valid, both the legislatures are competent to legislate these laws within their own sphere. But can a aggrieved person, the affected person, claim the compensation both under the federal law or the provincial law also? The answer is emphatic no, because this is again the overlapping of civil liabilities and civil rights. So you can claim either under the provincial law or under the federal. So this is in nutshell about the first part of the distribution of power. Then there is a case R versus, no, it is another case. That case we will discuss tomorrow, and I will take you to Kennelly, the legal resource available in Canada, how to use Kennelly, how to read the judgments also while exploring Kennelly, how to read different articles while exploring Kennelly. It is a website of Canadian system. This website is by the Canadian government, available as a legal resource. So and the NCA has specifically relied upon as a major source for reading, studying, and understanding the judgments of Supreme Court of Canada, which have been mentioned in the syllabus also. So tomorrow I will take you to Kennelly, and then I will demonstrate before you how to find out the judgments, how to find out the resources, and how to read and understand the judgments. Just if you want to explore it, it is Kennelly, CANLII, Canadian Legal Information Institute. You can go to the Google and find it out. There are various resources available within this website, and find out the judgments, the articles, and other material, which is very helpful to the NCA candidates. Thank you very much. Take care. Have a good time.
So I have a question.
Yes, please. Go ahead.
So there is a conflict of these